Hi guys, Brexiteers don't like reading stuff, and that seems to be the case with both John Redwood MP and Government Minister Kemi Badenoch. So the former was invited on to GB News, where he attacked Remainers for being wrong, and urged Rishi Sunak's administration to take advantage of Brexit benefits. So, is John correct about what's going so well with Brexit? Well, first let's have a listen to what he had to say, and then we'll have a look.
And John, as I have you here, I have to ask you about Brexit. Kemi Badenoch today saying Brexit's been great for the economy. We've seen exports booming. You said that would happen all along, didn't you?
Well, I wasn't sure, but I knew it wasn't going to be the bad news of all those Remain forecasts, and we were right about that. Remain said that practically everything would be worse, and practically everything turned out to be better. They said fewer jobs, there were more. They said...
Wait a minute. They said there would be fewer jobs, but there are more. So John Redwood, Brexiteer, is claiming that Remainers said that there will be fewer jobs, but John is saying that there are more jobs. So jobs in what sense? Because this is both correct and incorrect. There are fewer jobs because some businesses have closed down because of Brexit, or they have moved operations to the European Union. So there are fewer jobs in a sense. But there are also more jobs available because certain sectors can't actually get the workers they need. So there are massive vacancies available for workers. But because they can't get these workers, these vacancies remain open. So yes, there are jobs and there aren't jobs at the same time.
Higher interest rates, there are actually lower interest rates.
So Remainers said there would be higher interest rates, but John is saying no, the interest rates have dropped. So if we look at interest rates in 2016, the rate of interest from the Bank of England, you can see here the Bank of England, was 0.25%. Today, it's 5.25%. What planet is John Redwood living on?
Quite a long time. They said that our trade would slump, and as Kemi is rightly pointing out, we've had good export growth in the last few years.
Okay, now what is he talking about? Well, he's talking about this table here that Kemi Badenoch seems to be quoting from the IEA, the right-wing think tank. Now, what's interesting about this is John Redwood and Kemi Badenoch either didn't read this report from the IEA, or they did, but they decided to ignore part of it. So if we look at Table 1, it says UK post-Brexit goods trade measured in current prices, excluding precious metals. And you can see in the increase in trade between 2019 and 2022 was 13.4%. So massive increase in trade with the EU, exports to the EU between 2019 and 2022. If you ignore inflation, but if you account for inflation, you can see between 2019 and 2022, there was a drop of 7.2%. Also, there was a drop of 9.8% to non-EU countries, so exports from the UK to non-EU countries. There was a slight increase in imports from the EU and a significant increase in imports from outside the EU. So if you look at the first table, or the table 2 it says here, then Brexit is a success. But if you account for inflation, Brexit is a failure. And
they said property prices would collapse, and they went up.
Now, I don't know exactly what he's on about here. I think what he's talking about is this from The Guardian in 2016. House prices could fall by 18% if Britain quits EU, says George Osborne. Now, I'm no fan of George Osborne. And if you look at what he says here, could fall, not will fall. See, this is the difference between predictions made by Brexiteers and predictions made by Remainers. Remainers said this could happen. Brexiteers said this will happen. But what did George Osborne talk about here? Well, it says, what impact might leaving the EU have on UK house prices? House price falls as large as 18% have been predicted if the UK votes to leave the EU, as demand from international buyers and workers dries up. The IMF, the Treasury and estate agents have all claimed a vote leave would destabilise the market. If Brexit leads to a fall in sterling, overseas investors may rush into the London market. In the rest of the country, however, mortgage rates are likely to be the key concern. So, in a sense, it's a consequence of Brexit that there was this idea that, well, what happened is the value of the pound would drop, and this would mean that international investors would flood into Britain and buy up a lot of cheap property. But this didn't take into concern I believe the lack of house building. See, the Tories haven't been building any affordable or social housing since they've been in power. So if they had actually been building enough homes, then perhaps it's possible that the value of houses would have dropped. But the Tories were not building, so the problem was, of course, supply and demand. Demand remained high, supply remained low. So Brexit wasn't really having an impact on this. But let's get back to John.
They were wrong, the Remain lot. Thank goodness they were. I wish they'd cheer up. This country has a great future. We now need to use some of the Brexit freedoms, and let's start by changing the VAT and getting it down a bit, because the reason we've got these silly rules on VAT thresholds is because we're still running on the EU model.
Okay. So, and finally, well, the problem with VAT is, you can see here, VAT rates in Europe, in the European Union, well, in Britain, VAT is 20%. This is according to data from this year, 2023. But if you look around different countries in the EU, Italy has a VAT rate of 22%, while Finland has a VAT rate of 24%. Spain, 21%. Luxembourg, 16%. So it's not necessary to leave the EU to change the VAT rate. And of course, there are also the possibility of having zero VAT on certain goods. So this is once again a lie Brexiteers have been pushing since 2016. We need to leave the EU in order to reduce VAT. The UK has been out of the EU for a number of years now, and VAT hasn't been changed. So somebody is lying. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.